G'day guys, I'm back. I've been to the shop again and I've got some toys. So I've got a direct USB interface, and in the last video I hadn't bothered to put fuses in, so I've got some fuses. These are the only ones they had. These are not cheap, man. So a 125 amp, so each of these battery like little enclosures, the 15 kilowatt enclosures, are capable of 150 amps constant. That's a 125. I don't see this thing ever using more than 250 even peak, ever. So I think it's 4,000 watts. So I don't know what, I can't remember what 4,000 watts were, about 80 amps I think. So this is way too big. So this will effectively just be used for a short. I got these enclosures. I'm a bit skeptical about this thing living underneath the van. But I mean, effectively, as long as these terminals are, here are making good contact, we should be okay. And I've got basically two of those. So splurging on the Victron brand because I couldn't afford anything. Well, not that I couldn't afford it, because that shit's more expensive, but nobody else had any stock. So this thing was erroring out. Quite likely low battery was being caused by the fact that the terminals are just loosely on the outside of the batteries, but also it doesn't have connectivity with the BMV. The servo controller I've got for this is being used in the to test the JK BMS integration, so I don't want to take that off yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the Raspberry Pi Venus OS device, which is currently monitoring the house, and I'm going to connect it to this. The RS485 adapter that connects to the meters in the meter box, they're connected by a Zigbee USB device, so I can put it in here and use it to manage this inverter and still monitor the power on the house. And if I plug this inlet into the grid, I've got a GPO in my meter box. If I plug it into the meter box, this thing could charge off the excess power on the house. Now that's a legal grey area, because if I was to install this on the house and have it participate, I would need permission to do that. But this is installed on my caravan, so as long as it's not backfeeding the grid, it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know. Like, the fact that people install these in their RVs or their caravans means what? I'm not sure. Like, this is running the ESS assistant, so because we tested it for that use case before we bought the Quattro, so I don't know what the situation is, but I'm going to test it anyway. I don't see it doing any harm. It'll only be plugged into a GPO, and we can disconnect it. I'll current limit it so it can only take 15 amps onto the input, and I'll tell it that it's not allowed to backfeed the grid whatsoever. Anyway, I'll get under the van, install these things, make the wiring safe under the van. I still have to drop the front battery. I still have to put some locking nuts on the rear battery, so I don't want to lock anything into position until I've got it all running. And once I've got it all running, I'll spend a day going underneath, locking up all the bolts. Like you can see, these ones here aren't actually tightened up yet, so that way I can manipulate cabling if I needed to. But yeah, hopefully I can get this running, because the next thing for us to do, I might actually just go and grab it and I'll show you. I made a comment in my previous video about this thing being extra power storage for the house. This is a Shelly 4PM. It's a DIN mounted like relay with power monitoring ability. So I've got one of these in the shed. I've had it in a couple of other videos, but effectively it gives you IoT control over like 4 GPOs, right? So you can have 4 switches in there. Sorry, the switches are down here, but you can put 4 GPOs on this, or hardwire devices if you want to, and then you can use MQTT or Home Assistant or something like that to automate it. So I'm going to use MQTT and Node-RED because the servo controller can run that. And what I intend to do is that if the load in the house, so the servo controller in the house tells me that my load is above 1500 watts, I will switch one of these outputs on. And the first one will have a 500 watt charger attached to it, and the second one will have 120, 120, and 120. That's just because that's what I've got. It's nothing specific. The 500 watt charger is actually off my e-scooter. It's a 52 volt charger that'll charge to 58.5. So when the house's load is at X, and this one's SOC is above X, so let's say it's above 50%, the caravan will absorb some of the house's load by feeding power back to the battery. And before anybody says it, that is not efficient. It is definitely not efficient to charge these, or have this thing take 58 volt power out of the battery, or 52 volt power out of the battery, convert it to AC, send it to a charger, and then put it back into a battery. But this isn't about efficiency. This is about the battery in the house sharing its load with the battery in the caravan. The battery in the caravan, there's no way I could run wires from the caravan all the way back to the shed. That would be, I'd say, a 35-40 metre run without significant voltage drop. So converting it to AC, I feel, is manageable because I can just drag a single cable about that size. So this is a 15 amp lead that's been chopped up and used as, you know, hardened cable in here because it's got better insulation than that white stuff you normally run through the wall. One of these cables will make the entire run, and the voltage drop would be insignificant by comparison to DC. So this is going to get mounted on a wall in the shed, and it will be clearly labelled that it is powered from an external source and that it is dangerous or potentially unisolated. And I'll probably have a mode light on it warning you that it's still got power. And it will have one of these power inlets just on the side of the garage, right? So the caravan will be plugged into that power inlet, like from this GPO out, will go to the inlet on the side of the house, and that will power this in the shed. The DC chargers will be attached to this, and so up to 760 watts, is that right? Or is it 860 watts? Potentially 860 watts of the house's power could be coming directly from the caravan. That's the plan. What I've got to do is, well, I've got to figure out what the logic looks like. Well, first, I better get this thing finished. At the same time, once I run this power inlet into the, like say I run it into the side of the garage, that also means that this is a 3000 VA inverter. I could AC couple a inverter, so when this thing's at home, it charges off an AC coupled inverter itself. That's some extra solar capacity I could have. The one in the shed is already well and truly past the factor 1.0 rule, so I can't commission any more on it. That means I've got a spare Galvo. Galvo is not explicitly listed as compatible, but it definitely works as long as it's running a newer version of the firmware. So I could AC couple a 3000 VA Fronius inverter to this. I've got a 35 amp MPPT for it already. There's space in the van itself for another one, so I'm going to put 100 by 20 in the van and add extra solar panels to the roof. So I should be able to get about 900 watts on the roof of the van. I can put 3 kilowatts into it if I mount the 3 kilowatts on the front of the house. And when this thing's parked at home participating in the power share, it will be contributing potentially power back to the house. So the 90 kilowatts that we've got in the house could potentially become 120 minus some inefficiency, so let's call it 115. Anyway, I'm nowhere near that yet. I've got to go and put these fuses in. I'll bring the Raspberry Pi out that's currently monitoring the grid-tied solar on the house, and hopefully we can get this thing charging off the house's solar at some point today. Yeah, I'll just temporarily mount that in here. One of the things I haven't thought about is how am I going to get the power back in from the USB into here. That was a bit silly of me. I'll figure something out. I can probably come up through one of these holes. There's that big one I left for the data cable, so I could probably power it off an extension cord, stick it underneath there on a box or something to keep it out of the rain, and have the USB cord come up here and power the Raspberry Pi. I don't know, I will just wing it as usual. I've got some wires here, and I've got some terminals there. What do we got? 8 mils. We got 1, 2, 3. Oh shit, I need one more. There's one more in there, I think. So I will make up these little jumper leads. One end will go onto the battery pack, one end will go into the fuse block. The current negative that's on the fuse block will go onto the other end of the fuse holder. I'll only video one of those because I'm sure it's boring as bad shit when I climb under the van and bounce the camera all over the place. Righto, knock together a couple of cables. Use the old, these things are rippers, man. They go fairly decent sized cable and they're easy to use. I don't know why people go to hydraulic. I suppose they're probably doing something significantly bigger than this, but whatever, Trevor. Alright, time to get these and get under the van. I am really skeptical about this. Let's have a look. I don't mind if I've got to put something around this to hold it on, but I reckon I might be firing up the old 3D printer. Get out of there, you bugger. Does that even come out? Watch me break this. What's that cover going to do? Not much. I mean, that's I don't even know who that is, but this thing's branded as fucking Victron. Yeah, righto. Sure. I've got a printer too, mate. So, drop that one. Doesn't matter. Alright, 8mm, yep. I don't know how much effort I want to stick into mounting these things, because I reckon this is going to be a temporary situation, but I'll jump under the van and have at it, I guess. Where's my drills gone? I've lost my drills. Alright, let me go find some drills and I'll get under there and mount these things. I'll use the same stainless steel 5mm bolts I've been using for everything. Well, it's official. I didn't think this through. The only place I can really put it is there. I don't want it on the inside, I'm just sizing it up. It's going to make it mighty hard because there ain't enough room, which means it's going to have to go directly up, and this fucking thing's in the way. That's no good to me, is it? Right, back to the drawing board, I guess. Could I maybe... No, I can't go up to that. I could put it behind. Yeah, you know what? That's what's going to happen. This is quite thick. Fuse can go on the back. Oh shit, that cord's not going to reach, is it? Fuck. Maybe do I fuse it on the positive side and I'll drag that other cord forward. Yeah, well, I put the wrong coloured heat shrink on, didn't I? I'll go and cut a couple of strips off. I don't like that idea. I want it to be clear. Like, there's no heat shrink on this yet either. I've got to put heat shrink on it anyway, so I'll go and cut some red heat shrink off and I'll change the colour of this one. I'll bring enough to do these at the same time. I'll do these one terminal at a time because I don't want to risk them touching one another. The body earth is not on yet, so if I drop one and it strikes the side of the chassis, it's not a big deal, but if I once the cabling's done, I'll make sure a body earth gets put on. Yeah, in the meanwhile, I found the correct bolts for it too. There they are. Just double check. Yeah, they're the ones. So I probably should put a spring washer in there, but you know what? I don't bloody well have any. I'll add that to the shopping list to come back and put copper spring washers in, and maybe even a copper washer in between the two mating surfaces. Don't know if that's actually necessary, but I think indifferent materials end up causing corrosion, but I don't know, I'll do some Googling after this. So, that's in. I can't actually do these things up with the drill the way it is because the nut on the back's going to spin, so I'm going to put the, that's going to go there. Cover will push back up against it, but I'll have to 3D print something to keep the mud out and whatnot. I'll drill a hole in the cover so that any water that gets in can drip out. It effectively makes the cover useless. But yeah, what I'll probably do is cover this with grease once I'm finished to stop any water from getting to the actual terminals and just make it so, actually no, I don't want to use grease, I need something that's not flammable. I'll figure something out, something that's fire retardant, so if the fuse blows it doesn't start a fire under here. But this wire will move up to that post, and then what have I done with those cables? Oh, I've misplaced them already. Trust that to happen. I've already put a red coating on them, so I've got shrink wrap for that one. So this one will get relocated to that pole, and then I'll stretch that wire out across the gap. And yeah, then we'll have fuses. Thank God for that. Feel safer already. Actually, I don't feel safe right now, to be honest. I did all this work, and let's face it, I've probably forgotten to do something like, I don't know, put these bolts in. Typical. Nice and tight. I know Andy from Off Grid's garage will get under here with a torque wrench and whatnot, but I'm not as diligent as Andy. I'm going to squish this thing until I see that spring washer squash flat, and I'm going to assume that is tight enough. I don't want to put too much pressure on it because it'll break these little clips off the corner. So as long as they don't want to move, which they don't, I could put a little bit more heat on that one, but yeah, I think that looks good enough. So it comes around the back here. I've got to tighten up that one at the back, so let's give this whole deal here a bit of a, oh no, oh, crap, heat shrink's in the way. Let me let me turn this off and I'll use both hands to tighten that because I can't get the ratchet on it. Alright, fuses are in. Let's see how these covers look. That probably should have been facing down, but that looks alright, doesn't it? Quite like that actually. I got these from Alt-Tech. They're rippers really. That's just going to collect dirt though. It's probably going to get blown off on the road, but that's alright. It's alright for a minute. Looks the part right now. I've got to come back in and do some cable management around this, so I'll tape that together, and then I've got to push some split corrie up it. Yeah, push some split corrie up into all these gaps. Like if I had a gap in between where these cables were just exposed, that'd be alright. I mean, you'd install them in a car like that, but because they're going to be rubbing on this metal, I'm not happy about that. So this one here especially, because this is the one dangerous bit, because it's the one that's got the fuse on it. So between here and the battery, no fuse. So I'll make sure this is the one that turns into a fucking light bulb if it gets shorted. That's probably the highest risk point. So I'll do some cable management there, stick these two together, and then I'll push something over it to protect it from the steel. I'm not going to bother recording the next one because why do you want to watch the same thing twice? I certainly wouldn't, unless it's Star Wars, of course. But yeah, I'll be back shortly. I normally use Tessa tape for cable management, but I couldn't find my Tessa tape. I used Gorilla Tape just to hold this together. I wouldn't use it permanently because it's shite. But yeah, I'm really regretting that now because it's hard to get off. They want way too much for Tessa tape in Western Australia, so like if you go down to like Auto 1 or something, like Auto 1's the cheapest place to get it, but I find it's significant. That's why I didn't put the bloody earth strap on the body yet, right? Because while I'm fidgeting with these cables, I didn't want it arcing out on the side and blowing those fuses, especially when they're $50 each for fucking Victron fuses. I do love Victron's gear, man, but come on guys, 50 bucks? Surely not. But anyway, I'll rip this off. This is the second battery. Obviously there's a lot more room on this side, very convenient. I'll rip this off, figure out where all the cable management's going to go. Yeah, so there's the cables for the other battery at the back. So these ones did a little, you know, they got on the off ramp there. So I'll do the same thing. I'll push some corrie over and whatnot. The corrie I got from the shops unfortunately isn't big enough. We're not going to be moving the caravan anytime soon, so it's not going to rub through anytime soon, but I'll make sure that I've done that. In fact, I've got to do that in the next couple of weeks because I will bloody forget, and then sure enough I'll be shooting down the road and find out that I've blown all my fuses. Alright, I've somehow misplaced the cover for this one, so which, let's face it, it's clipped on backwards. As soon as some wind gets under it, we're going to lose it anyway. I have got the red one here, but front battery's wired up. The other day, for shits and gigs, oh, getting old. The other day I thought to myself that maybe the inverter cut out from low voltage because it didn't have a BMV, but I wonder if it cut out because the terminals are not on properly. Let's have a look. Nah, it's still saying low battery. Whoa! Ah, yeah, so it's just switched off. Yeah, so it's not because of the terminals, it's because it can't speak to its BMV. I'm pretty sure that's a side effect of the ESS assistant being loaded in the inverter. Like if you just took all the assistants out, it wouldn't care. It would have a low voltage off. This is at 53 volts, I believe, at the moment, so that's not low voltage. Like, you know, I think this thing's set to go down to like 51, and 51 is still pretty high with lithium. You could go as low as like 47. I've seen other YouTubers do, like, go all the way down to 44 or something. I'm not going to destroy my batteries like that, but yeah. So I'm pretty sure that all it is, I should well, actually, let's start on that bit. I'm going to go get the unit out of the shed with its power supply. I'll disconnect it from the grid tie. We'll lose a couple of hours of monitoring, but that's not the end of the world. I'll bring it in here, find a box or something to set it on, and we'll fire it up, and we'll see if we can get this thing working. So I've got that's to speak to that, and I've got a Mark III V bus adapter in the shed, so I'll go and grab that as well.